Yeah, thanks everyone for attending. I don't know whether you have heard about the Grants Hub or you're in your own crisis situation, whether that's COVID or whether that's something different for you at the moment. But yeah, look, thanks for coming along. I'm happy to make this a really interactive session. So I'm just admitting Jamie, who's trying to get in again. I'm happy to make this a really interactive session. So whether you want to unmute yourself and ask a question or pop some chat in, I'll try and watch that while I present too. But definitely keen to be helpful through this. I've put a lot of content in the slides. So if we don't get through everything, you can go back and I'll make them available to share with everyone afterwards as well. So I'll just share, hopefully Jamie can hear now. Okay, I'll just share my screen with you. Okay, can everyone see that okay? Yep, great. So I'm going to share with you, if you do want to ask a question verbally, just make sure you unmute yourself. I actually can't see the chat function on this screen that I've got here, so maybe just unmute and interrupt me, that's totally fine. So I'm going to share with you about launching and growing a business during crisis. Ironically, I'm actually doing this from a caravan today. We left Victoria to go on a 1-week holiday to Merimbula, and then the border closed while we were there. We can get back in again. But our son has a serious health condition, which you'll hear about today as well. So it's actually safer for us to be out of Victoria at the moment and traveling rather than being back in Victoria. So we've been driving around Coffs Harbour this morning, finding the best spot to log in for the internet. So hopefully this is all good. But before even this situation, it's been a bit of a whirlwind of a personal and business ride for me. So that's what I'm going to share with you about today. So the Grants Hub, in case you haven't heard about us, just quickly, we're an online grants directory. So we help you find grant funding. We are like a realestate.com for houses or seek for jobs. That's pretty much what the Grants Hub is. We launched in 2013 from Warragul. That's where we're based, but we're a whole online remote business. We have 1,500 plus members across Australia now, big social media following and newsletter subscribers. The only reason I share that information with you is to show that you actually can launch and grow a business during crisis. Everyone's crisis is different, but I'm going to share with you about my business crisis and personal crisis. So first part of this is launching the business. So I launched the Grants Hub at an ideal time of being 39 weeks pregnant with child number 2. Not recommended, but you know, you have to go with what you get thrown at you at the time. So it wasn't the intention to launch that far into my pregnancy, but the web developer was running a bit late. There were a whole range of factors behind it, and in the end we just set it live. I went overdue with my daughter, so I kind of figured I had a little bit of wiggle room. I'm like, oh, you know, this baby will be a couple of weeks late, so you know, it'll be fine. So launched at 39 weeks. In the end, Tom was 5 days late, so that was good from a business perspective, not so much from a pregnancy perspective. But when he was 2.5 weeks old, so the Grants Hub was about 3.5 weeks old, he got diagnosed with congenital heart disease and a very serious heart condition. So from that point onwards, I was in hospital with him. And at 6 weeks of age of the Grants Hub, when Tom was 4 weeks old, he had emergency open heart surgery. So that was literally emergency surgery. So rushing into the theatre, like the surgeons were asking us questions on the way in, which medications do you want us to give him or not, or you know, it was an extremely close call. You can't get much closer to a much closer point between life and death with a child. So that was, you know, I've got this business that's just gone live, I've got my son here, my daughter's been shipped around, family members, like it was just a crazy time. Certainly not an ideal personal or business situation to be in at that point. Many people think, why wouldn't you just put a pause on the business? The Grants Hub is a subscription-based business. So we have people paying for either monthly or annual subscriptions. And because I had customers from day one who had signed up for a year, you know, we had an obligation to fulfill that I needed to keep serving them. So, you know, we've entered this agreement essentially that we provide them with grants information. So I couldn't just shut it down overnight. So, you know, really sometimes in business, you've just got to take the leap. There's just no perfect time to start, and there is no perfect moment to launch. When I launched it wasn't an ideal time to launch. It wasn't my perfect plan. It just wasn't the way things were meant to be. And then the heart condition thrown on top of that was just like ridiculous. But, you know, looking back on that, if I hadn't launched the Grants Hub at that point, I don't think it would exist today, because it was such a difficult personal time. So sometimes, you know, these crises, having your business, or it can help you get you through your crisis. It's nearly like it gives you something else to think about while you're in a crisis situation, at least for me personally anyway. I love this quote from Thank You Australia, that your lack of experience in challenging the status quo may be the greatest strength you have. So you don't need to know everything before you launch your business. You learn so much along the way. Some of you have asked in the questions when you signed up about, you know, how do you know when to launch, or, you know, what's the moment? I really don't think there's a perfect moment. You need to be clever and do your research and know what you're getting yourself into to a point. But I don't think there's a perfect moment. And with that, you know, perfectionism can work against you. It can really slow things down. So I would encourage you, don't let your perfection in business limit you and stop you from launching or growing. Either way, sometimes you just have to launch it and then work out if there's an issue. Sometimes you don't know there's an issue with your product or your service until you've launched it and people give you that feedback. So it's being able to respond to those things quickly. You know, this year, clearly so many factors can't be predicted. Personal factors can't be predicted. No one thought that 2020 was going to throw at us. Bushfires, COVID-19, it's the year that no one wanted. I mean, there's no words left really, I don't think, for this year. It's just awful. And we can't forget, within, you know, these big national crises that we're facing, people are in their own personal crises in so many different ways. You know, it could be domestic violence, it could be issues with children, it could be deaths, there's so many different things that come into a year. I think this just, bushfires, COVID, just like caps it all off for a lot of people, and it's put us in more of a national crisis. A key point in business is knowing your why and keeping that front and center. So before you launch, know what your why is. So for me, that was finding out, I want to make it easier to find grants. There was a problem that I identified, that it was difficult to find grant funding, and I worked that out from a previous job I was in at the City of Casey, actually, as their grants facilitator. That was a really great part of my job, was applying for the big state and federal government funding programs, and the other part was upskilling community groups within the City of Casey to find grants and reduce their dependence on council funding. So you know, I saw this need. It's like, this is so difficult. Or the system, you know, there was one business that was operating more as probably a not-for-profit social enterprise sort of model, but it wasn't particularly like tech savvy. Design wasn't a thing. You know, I could see that we could do things better, and I was quite passionate about it. So that was, you know, the why. Making it easy to find grants is why the Grants Hub exists. It's our purpose, and it's the central focus behind what we do. So as a business, we need to make money, but that's actually not what our main focus is. So most of our team meetings and our conversations and our projects are focused on making it easier to find grants. That's the central point that we focus on as a team. We talk about new products, improvements, reaching people better, sending out grant information that's relevant, new ways to share information, the stories that people share with us. That's what we spend our time talking about as a team. So we're purpose focused, we're not dollars focused. When you focus on that, your dollars will actually come in, because people will like what you're providing. It's not like you don't think about money in business. There's no point being in business if you're not making money, really, if that's, you know, if you're a for-profit business. But for us, our purpose is to make it easier to find grants. We're a customer-focused business, and our objective. Jessie,
yeah. Could I just interrupt there? I suppose, are you sort of alluding to the fact that you're sort of constantly surveying for the value proposition within the organisation, not just the dollars, but what are you sort of, what's the transaction that's happening within your organisation and the community you're engaged with? That sort of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes from when you first start your business. So you need to know who your customer is. For us, we're primarily servicing a not-for-profit community. About 80% of our customers, we call them members. We don't see them as customers. Like, our members are probably 80% not-for-profit. So clearly there's a strong human, like, personal approach to that. But, you know, you need to know who you're serving and focus on that and respond to their needs. So we're very, very member driven. So they might say, you know, it's too tricky to find grants about Indigenous issues. So instead of just typing in Indigenous into your search platform, into your grants directory, we want to be able to click a button. So we release things like that based on what our customers are telling us. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
cool. At the start, I mean, we're 7 years in now. So at the start, you know your why, but it's not like you've got this beautiful team objective happening. This is like 7 years into business. And we're a very small team. Like, we've got about 8 to 10 people all together that work within the Grants Hub. That's a 2.5 full-time equivalent staff ratio. Like, we're extremely lean. Everyone is part-time or subcontracted. So it takes a long time to get to this point of having a beautiful team objective for the year. But that's essentially what you're shooting for. So know your values and stick to them. It's so important. Pick out the most important things I think about business. There's so many things you can learn when you're starting or growing in business. But, you know, most of you are sort of looking at starting up or in that phase of the entrepreneur's sort of startup launching phase. So think about your values and write them down. Get your values right and use them as the foundation to everything you do. So we use our values that I've got them written there for you, for everything from recruiting decisions, budget decisions, pricing decisions, product releases. You know, it's so important. There's a massive temptation in business to waver from your values. I think if you get that right from the beginning and be really strong in that, and sometimes be willing to lose either a customer or a business deal because of it, in the long term, for me, it's paid off. So, you know, sometimes you might get someone want to buy in, but they don't quite fit within your values for whatever reason. It doesn't mean they're not a good person. They're just not quite within your values framework. You've got to be willing to say no at certain times. And sometimes it's hard to know. Like, for me, it's a gut feeling. Not everyone's a gut feeling kind of person, but you know, when you're by yourself at the beginning, gut feeling is really important. When you've got a team, you can bounce things around a little bit more, but I think not wavering from your values is huge. This is a very practical point. Don't buy what you don't need. So avoid the temptation to be fully equipped and spend big from the get-go. So you might want the leather chairs for your restaurant. That doesn't mean you need the leather chairs for your restaurant. You know, like, that could be an expensive outlay for you at the beginning. It might be cheaper for you to go to IKEA. You know, this is just a really practical example, but it might be cheaper for you to go to IKEA and get chairs that kind of look cool but aren't the leather version. That's probably a better idea to test your restaurant model, rather than lashing out on tens of thousands of dollars on your leather chairs. These things happen. You know, sometimes people might spend massive on lighting or a tech product, or there's so many things you can spend money on. But I think if you're still at that stage where you want to test your product, take it to market and test it to see if it works, and then keep investing in it. Some ideas work and some ideas don't work. I'm actually in the middle, as well as running the Grants Hub. The entrepreneurship is kind of my favorite part of it. That's what keeps me stimulated. So I'm also launching a new business at the moment. It's totally different to the Grants Hub. It's definitely a fun thing, but I'm constantly reminding myself of this, like, don't buy what you don't need. I don't need this and I don't need this. I'm going to start bare minimum. Like, minimum viable product is kind of the fancy term we're talking about here. You want to know the absolute minimum you can get started with. Use a minimalist business mindset. So a lot of people now are aware of minimalism as a concept. Does everyone kind of know what minimalism, you've heard about that as a concept? Maybe not. It's pretty much, you don't want too much stuff. Like, you like good quality things that serve probably multiple purposes or that you really love. I operate the business in that same way. Some people might say operating lean or operating minimalist. At the beginning of the grant sub, I ordered all these letterheads because, you know, every business needs a letterhead. But we're actually an online business. So now my kids are using letterhead for craft paper because we didn't need it. Like they just, now that's their art and craft. So they give pictures to all these people and it's like got the grant sum on the back. It looks like we're totally using our kids to promote our brand. But it's just scrap paper, you know, and that might have only been $400 or $500. But at the time, like that was $400 or $500 I could have put into something totally different. So everyone's minimum is different. We're online, so we don't need letterhead. A lot of you will probably need letterhead, but think about what that is for your business. As I said, if you recruit right, you can do a lot with a really small team. We've got 2.5 full-time equivalent employees. This is easily the biggest team that we've had. That's unusual. Like if you're an online business, that's kind of achievable, but you know, it's an unusual, it depends what sort of business model you're looking at. I'm not saying everyone should aim to have 2.5 employees. There's some ideas. You can keep these screenshots with you, but just for operating lean. So incorporate automation, engage freelancers rather than employees. That's a big way that you can save money from the get-go. So employees can be quite expensive if you don't need a regular person every day a week or 2 days a week or whatever it is. So freelancers, there's a lot of great people who are working a full-time job and want to do some extra hours, especially at the moment in the situation we're in. Also some uni students, you know, they're like way up there in their marketing knowledge, or accounting students that are happy to do zero. There's a heap of people that are trying to find work. So it's a great way to be able to support them, but also keep your costs down in your business. You know, work the hard yards yourself, be humble, drive older cars, only upgrade your phone when you have to, be willing to do every job, even the most mundane, yourself, whether that's answering online inquiries, doing a refund, putting things in envelopes, whatever the job is. You know, if you want to operate lean, you have to be willing to do that yourself. And enjoy the simple pleasures in life. So it comes back to your personal expenditure and your business expenditure when it's your own business. It's kind of both sides of it. It can be a long time until you can take an actual profit from your business. Oh, I'll go back. So the last point in this section is be real. One of the most attractive aspects of starting your own business is you get to set the rules. So you know what kind of a business and culture you want to have in your whatever business this is. It could be an online business or a face-to-face. You're the one who's laying the ground rules. You're the one who gets to break the mold. There's no such thing as what a CEO should look like. Like now my job title is CEO, which I hate. I really do. I struggle with it personally. But I've realized now there's no such thing as what a CEO looks like. It doesn't mean I can't run a conference from a Zoom, you know, in a caravan. It's our business. We can do what we want. It actually doesn't matter. This wouldn't be appropriate for every business, clearly, but it doesn't, you know, whatever job you're in, you don't have to wear a suit. You don't have to wear a dress. You don't have to wear high heels. There's not this, you know, you're the one laying the ground rules for your business, and it reflects in your whole culture. You want that to be consistent. So be real and be yourself. And I think this year in 2020, that's probably more acceptable than ever. So because everyone now is working remotely, we've seen people's kids walking into a meeting. We've seen everyone working in their pajamas. We've seen, you know, people's internet connections don't work properly. We've seen it and people are liking it. So be real and share those stories and the story behind your business too. Don't change who you are, and don't adapt or skew your story to make it sound better, because that lack of authenticity, it will catch you out. People remember stuff for quite a long time. And some of your earliest customers, I think particularly for us because we're subscription, we've had some people that have been with us now for 6 or 7 years. So they remember things along the way, and they'll send you an email. Oh, remember, I don't know if you remember me, but you do, you remember certain people. If you're kind of saying this story over here and this story over here, things don't add up, and that, or the lack of authenticity will eventually catch you out. So just be real. Don't stress about what you look like or what clothes you've got or where you're operating from or whatever it is. You know, be real and share that. Yeah, share the struggles too. So show the real side of your business to a point. You don't want to show every real side of your business. I tell this story now, but I would never have told it years ago. I got asked to do an interview on ABC radio. So I did this interview and they called me earlier. So I'd quickly jumped in the shower because I was like, oh, I've got time to have a shower. They're not going to call me for another, whatever, 20 minutes, half an hour. I was in the shower and my phone rang for this interview. Like, they called me early. I did my first ever radio interview, like, with a towel wrapped around me, still dripping wet from the shower, you know, like, I'm not going to share that story back then. I don't know what people would have thought, but now it's like, you know, people are real. Like, there's things that happen that you don't normally make aware of, but share some of those struggles maybe, and particularly during a crisis, people respond to that well. Let people know where you're at, or, you know, you've got challenges that you're facing, or delays because of COVID or shipping, whatever it is, you know, share those struggles. A lot of people have your back, so don't stress too much about that. Moving on to growing a business during crisis. One thing I've learned about crisis is that it can, I'm not a psychologist. This is not medical information. This is not, I've got absolutely no qualification in crisis or psychology. I just want to put that out there now. This is just personal experience. From my experience, what can commonly happen in crisis is you've got your base crisis down here, your base issue, right? Number one, congenital heart disease for us. And then you get like all these other things like on top. Like, it's just like this compounding, like, crisis upon crisis upon crisis. It's like you're dealing with multiple crises all at the same time. So that bunch of stuff that I've got there on the screen, there's some of the things that at my immediate family now. So I've got 3 kids and my husband and I. There's some of the things that we've faced since Tom was born with congenital heart disease. So I'm not going to go into specifics of who belongs to what person, just from a privacy perspective, probably particularly because this is getting recorded. But, you know, it's really difficult. And I would encourage all of you, with whatever crisis situation you're in, probably be prepared that you can have other things pop up that you're like, where has this come from? Like, it's so important to look after yourself along the way, because it can be a compounding effect. COVID, I think, will be particularly true for this. Not to freak people out, but I think there will be bigger, longer term ramifications, you know, from something like this, and we're potentially anticipating for, or, you know, it's complex. So, you know, one of there that's mine is fibromyalgia. So before Tom, you know, I just thought that was sort of this thing that some people really struggled with. And then about 2 years after Tom was born, at the first time he became sort of stable in his health for a little bit, I flared up with this incredible pain. I couldn't think clearly. It was like my whole body. I don't know if anyone here gets fibromyalgia, but everything hurt. I couldn't cook. I couldn't open a can. I couldn't cut. I couldn't peel garlic. I couldn't open a door handle properly. Like, it was just, ended up getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is common after people have, you know, been through trauma. But there's a lot of things that you can face. So ironically, I think you should respond to issues quickly. So sometimes when we're in crisis, we want to shy away and hide from everything that is difficult. We might want to say everything else is like too hard, like, no, just go away. I don't want to deal with you right now. Particularly in a crisis situation, some of us would naturally do that anyway with our personalities, but it's so important to respond to issues, people issues or product issues, quite quickly if you want to protect your business in the longer term. So have plans and systems in place to fix your bugs for us being online and your issues quickly. And you want to do that to try and minimize the damage that can get done to your business. In an online space, people are extremely bold. It's like you can be speaking with a different person when they're online, because I think they're not having a face-to-face conversation. They forget there's someone on the other end of the screen receiving this email or this message or this Facebook post. Or, you know, people can be very nasty until you respond to them. They're having a one-sided conversation, so they can put on, you know, type out whatever they feel like. Particularly in that space, you need to respond quickly. It helps people realize that you're a real business with real people, and it does, like, you know, reduce the likelihood of social media rants. It can be difficult to manage this in the beginning, and it's when you're in the really early days, if you don't have anyone else working with you, it's a real juggle to not become addicted to your phone for fear that people will say negative things about you, and you want to constantly check your email or your inbox or your, you know, your Facebook page or your Insta page. There's a point where you have to let it go a little bit, but if you can address things quickly rather than shy away and letting things build up, I think it does work in your favor in the end. When it comes to growing your team, when you're a little bit further down the road, or even, you know, from the outset, if you're in a business where you need team members from the beginning, recruit team members who are far more knowledgeable in their area of expertise than you. So I aim to employ people who are smarter than me in their own areas. So, you know, you want someone working in their field of excellence. I really know very little about web development, even design. Any of our employees know far more about their area than I do. So Neve is our customer success person, which is like customer support. Man, she knows it like the back of her hand. So she'll come to us and give me flow charts on how, like, the way people access information through the website or access our support. You know, she's an expert in her area of customer success. If I tried to just employ any random person or who might potentially be the cheapest person for the job, that wouldn't happen. But if you employ the right people and you take time to employ the right people and you treat them well, they'll just fly. And if you can be hands off and let them run with their thing, do your best to not be a micromanager. So you want to get the right people to be able to trust people and have a really high functioning team. But I do encourage you to outsource where you can. So if you're not an accountant or a designer or Google Ads, if that's not your area of expertise and you can afford to pay someone, you know, on a contracted arrangement, then do it. Those are areas where, for us at least at the Grants Hub, being online and design's a really critical element for us and a point of difference from our competitors. It's worth us investing money into those areas. Some of these things can be cheap too. It's not like you need thousands of dollars necessarily for some of these areas. If you're outsourcing, it can be quite cost effective to do it. Try and not get stuck learning things that you don't want to learn or things that you're not interested in, because it does take you away from your business. And really, if you can, you want to work where you love working the most. Other things can become a real drain for you and you can get quite resentful of your own business, which sounds weird to say that, but you can end up resenting your business. So try and work where you love it the most, where you feel the happiest, where, you know, even where your work environment suits you the best. Try and do that wherever you can.
Can I just ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. In regards to outsourcing, I mean, there's things like Odesk and Airtasker, but are there potentially any other platforms that you can recommend? I mean, you can put up a little note at the supermarket and say, looking for someone doing this sort of thing, but if it's time critical, I suppose you want something sort of snappy. How do you go about outsourcing technical specialists? Or
yeah, good question. Yeah, great question. So for us, Airtasker, sorry, what's your name?
Michael, by the way.
Michael, sorry. The question that Michael asked, so Airtasker, if you're not aware, is like nearly like a Gumtree for jobs. Like you can go on there and find people to do jobs for certain areas where they're areas of expertise. Like it could be design. I haven't actually used any of the Airtasker or things. We've got a fair amount of security that we have to consider within the Grants Hub for certain elements, for the really technical things, because it's a subscription business and we can't see people's credit card information, but it is within the platform, within a secure, you know, system. So we're a little bit limited with that. But those systems, I've heard mixed reviews, can be good, or sometimes people don't like them at all. Other ways that we do it is word of mouth primarily. So you'll get your designer will end up knowing a great web developer, or your AdWords person knows a marketing person. We've actually got a need for a marketing and comms person at the moment. And sorry, something just popped up here. No, all good. We've got a need for a marketing and comms person at the moment. So I asked someone that we work with, like another funding provider who's kind of like a work partner with us, if she knew anyone. So a lot of word of mouth. That would be how we primarily find people. But I think that does depend a little bit on your business. Yeah, if you can, word of mouth is awesome because people recommend people that they like or they know. LinkedIn can be a handy little spot too. If you've got small, short, it depends on your needs and how active your LinkedIn profile is. But you can put up something like, anyone know a marketing person, or anyone know this or that. Sometimes your subcontractors will know good people too. So if you like your accountant, they will probably recommend a lawyer that you will like, or a solicitor. So use the networks that you've got.
Cool, thank you.
No worries. Look after yourself along the way. So if you're the founder, it can be a very long time until you can take a completely work-free break. There are so many things that only you will know. And if you're launching a lean startup like what I did, chances are you won't be able to afford to pay anyone to cover you if you want to take a holiday. So you've got to look after yourself in other ways. I've tried burnout and I don't recommend it. It's not a great idea. But I think pretty much every entrepreneur hits that point where they get to burnout. It's extremely common. Founders, they're finding in the Silicon Valley for online business that a lot of founders are ending up with poor mental health outcomes. So it's something to be aware of. I think that's true in online business and any business probably, but I think, I've seen quite a lot of people end up with poor mental health outcomes because of they're in their own business. So you just want to watch out for that stuff, really look after yourself, however that is, along the way. So it could be really low cost ways if you're operating lean. Some people have the luxury of working off really big budget from the beginning. So this might not be relevant for you, but if you are operating off lean, chances are that you'll be on a tight budget. So whatever it is that gives you a mental break, do that and do it often. The startup journey is a long one. It can be, you want to be in it for the long haul. So when you've poured your heart and soul into it, it can be difficult to get that break. On that, if you do want to plan to get breaks, definitely save everything of yours to the cloud. So make sure you save, and in crisis too, that's handy. So have everything on the cloud. So on Google Drive or iCloud or whatever it is for you, make sure that at least one other person can access your information. So if our accountant said to us, one worst case scenario, Jessie, who's got access to your bank account, or who's got access to this, or who's got, what's your backup plan? You've got customers. What's your backup plan if the worst case scenario happens here and something happens to you? So, we don't like to plan for these things to happen, but you kind of need to have your backup plan and your risk management in place. Now, a lot of people, if they see give when they're in a startup, will go, no way, you're kidding me, I've got nothing left to give. Like I don't have any money left. I personally think that as business, we've got a moral responsibility to give, where our aim is to make money. If we're in business, it's to solve a problem. But really, someone said to me once, why are you in business? It's to make money. And I was like, no way, I'm not in business to make money. I'm in business to, serve your community. And that's true. But at the end of the day, you do have to make money in business. But I think we should be giving from the outset and giving generously. If we build giving into our business models from the beginning, it's just what you do. And I've had arguments with my accountant about this. Everyone's a little bit different, but if you have this sort of belief that you should give, then sometimes you've got to fight for it. It's not always easy. Don't make giving an add-on or something you'll do once you've got enough money in the bank, because there will never be enough money in the bank. There's always other things that you can spend money on. Give small amounts when you've got a little bit, give large amounts when you've got more, give time, give money, give through a spirit of generosity. So it can be through your customer service or through your emails or through the way you serve your tables, the way you treat people. It doesn't have to be financial giving necessarily, but you want someone who comes across your business and has an experience with you to feel better after they've dealt with you. So that is to do with giving. There's so many different ways we can give. at the Grants Hub, we decided to give away one $500 grant in 2018. So we did a volunteer support grant. And at the time, we only had like $3,500, $4,000 in the bank account. Like that was all the money that was there. And I decided to give away this $500 grant. Anyway, we received over 3,000 applications for one grant. Like it went viral. And I copped the most abusive emails during that grant program than I did it any other time of the business. So when I've given money away through the business, I've copped the most abuse. It's really ironic. So giving isn't always easy, but I do think it's worth it. With this particular program, the abuse ranged from, oh, you're just trying to make money from us, and you're just using this as a marketing campaign, and you should be giving away more than this. You've got so much money and you're just making all this profit from us and you're giving away $500. It was like more than 10% of our bank, like, you know, $500, and I got like not even $4,000 in the bank. So people don't know all of this side of it, but I still think it is important to do it. That $500 grant went to someone who learned Auslan so that she could support families from the Ronald McDonald House up in Brisbane. So, you know, now she can communicate with people who come into that house. So I think that's made a huge difference in her life. Your giving makes a massive difference. So whether you cop criticism when you're expecting to get the opposite, I still think you should give. Ultimately, you can know everything about business. You could have read every business book. You could have read every blog. You could go to every webinar. You could have your budget lined up. You could have done all the research in the world. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything except resilience can get you through the journey of your own business. That this is even in a normal situation. This is not even in a crisis situation. Resilience is obviously incredibly important at the moment, but that is like the number one thing that you need, I think, to succeed in business. So many business and life factors can't be predicted. There's some there, you know, I've just jotted down a few. Some of them can be negative ones, like or positive. So there's health issues, loss of loved ones, domestic violence, COVID, new competitors, market shifts. Like who would have thought face masks would be the business to be in 2020, or elastic, or jigsaw puzzles, or, you know, like who would have predicted that? These things, you know, unpredictable things can work in some people's favor. I don't know what the next one's going to be, but it's probably something obscure that we haven't thought of. At the same time, you can get a social media post go viral. We had one go viral, over 200,000 views over a weekend, and likes and interactions. I have no idea still why that post went viral. So that was a positive factor that couldn't be predicted for us. I haven't been able to get another one go viral since, so I don't have the secret, but you know, there's things that are unpredictable that can work. You've got to go with it. So I think really, ultimately, like I said at the start, there's no perfect time to start your business. There's no perfect moment to launch your business. You need to do your homework. You can do some competitor analysis. You can search Google. You can go onto Google and search what people search for the most to know if your idea is probably something people search for or not. Sometimes you've just got to start, and then you've got to keep going. Sometimes it's just day after day of just keeping on going and keeping persisting in this thing that you believe in. Because I don't think there is anything else quite like working on something that you truly believe in and you're passionate about, and that's your job. Like, it doesn't feel like your job. It's like you love it so much that you feel so lucky that you get to do that. So don't forget to stop and enjoy the view along the way, because it is very incredible and lucky to be working on something that we love and that we believe in. So that's all I've got in terms of the slides. I'll jump back. Oh, there's contact details on there if you want for me. I'm very happy if anyone wants to ask questions via any of those social ways actually, or my email directly, or I can give you a call. Feel free to contact me. Very happy to help anyone really in this stage. This is a fun stage of business, and it's nice to be able to share what you've learned, or the bits and pieces that you've learned along the way. So over to you if anyone's got questions. I'll jump out of that and stop screen sharing. There we go.
Cool. So does anyone have any questions for Jessie today? No? No worries. Well, thank you. Thanks, Jessie. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that presentation. And thanks for your willingness not only to be involved, but to share so many personal stories of yours. It's made for a really authentic webinar today. So thank you once again.
Oh, no worries.
And for doing it in the middle of a caravan as well. Exactly what we were
to the fun.
When we planned this webinar a couple of months ago, we definitely didn't think you'd be where you are right now.
You got to go with it, don't you? I've done some calls from some random places, from the school car park to now a caravan in a car park.